Welcome, invested students, to yet another episode of the Invested Teacher Podcast with all three of us.
What?
Shoot.
No.
It's just two. Matt right now is in negotiations back and forth on a deal.
Man.
And you know what? I think it's hilarious. Like I almost want him to hop on here just so we could watch him in action.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
But you know what? This episode topic, I think, is going to be too good for us to pass up on. So good luck to Matt and his clients. And he'll be back with us, I'm sure, on the next episode. John, what are we digging into here with our invested student friends?
Yeah. So in this episode, we are going to give you some insight on how to think about how you work best, or how you function, and how you a little bit of insight into your thinking, and how to like maximize your efficiency in any tasks you're looking to get into, or any project that you want to explore. We're going to talk about how the two of us have understood a little bit more about ourselves that actually have allowed us to enter in more deals, have gained, gone farther than we could have without knowing this information. And I think it's done wonders for us. It's done wonders for our partnership, Kyle, between you and me, and just knowing some of these facts about us that we're going to share with you, and how you can also know about these facts about yourself and where you can go. It's going to open up your eyes to not only helping you on your investment journey, but I think it's going to open, your eyes and give you new possibilities for any interaction you have with others, and also just getting work done yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the one thing that I think really helped, like, first of all, I want to say that I think you and I were really, I'm going to say lucky in a lot of ways, because early in our journey, we were doing a lot of the same things back when we were teaching in the math classroom. And, we've talked about that before, how we sort of were in a similar place in the journey. So we sort of collaborated and kind of built that team. We talk about team all the time on the podcast. And for us, it was sort of just like almost like the universe had us both at the same place in the journey, and we came together. We were just looking at really trying to save ourselves some time, help each other out. And from there, it developed into something much greater than that. Of course, our, Make Math Moments business that, we've had a tremendous amount of success with. But over the years, we started to recognize that, our personalities were very different.
We've talked about it here too.
Exactly. And, we've talked about how oftentimes we refer to you as like the implementer, right? Like you're like the one that, or the integrator, I should say. And we would call myself the visionary, the guy who's always kind of like, a little bit in the air, thinking maybe a little further down the road. And there was a specific book that actually got us down that path. It was by Gino Wickman. It's called Rocket Fuel. And Gino's got many great books.
Yeah.
Rocket Fuel is on our book list over at investedteacher.com/books. And going down that road, we're really trying to figure out, like, how do we make our business more efficient, more effective, and really more successful? And that was sort of, I would say, one of the books that, I don't know if it was the beginning of that
I think it
journey,
spoke to us the most.
It's the one that really had that, it really clicked something for us, right? And I think because there's two of us, there were two partners, it was really easy to identify. He kind of, summarized it in two ways. It was like almost right away, you're like, oh yeah, for sure, you are definitely the integrator. I'm definitely the visionary, and that makes a ton of sense. But actually, as we've gone down this path, we start to recognize some other characteristics about each other in terms of, kind of what makes us tick. And we've done so through, I guess, just through experimentation, through experience. And ultimately, as of more recently, we've actually dug quite a bit deeper into this area. And we think this could be super helpful for anyone in their journey, be it entrepreneurial, be it investing, or just be it like getting to know yourself and like what you enjoy doing, as we always talk about, like, what is it that you're doing all of this work for down the road?
Yeah, I think that book, Rocket Fuel, as you said, and I said there just a minute ago, that it's the first instance where we realize that when you have a partnership, when you have, coworkers, when you are, working together for a common goal, that the people who are on the team have different roles and can play different roles. And I think those, that book talks about having every successful, great business had two leaders. They had the visionary and you also had the integrator, because the visionary needs to be freed up to think about new ideas, new ways to generate revenue, be maybe the, forward facing, contact that, talks to the public, but also to partnerships. But the integrator is that person that says, okay, let's take what we want to do and let's make sure it gets done. So there's like the CEO or the COO. Like there's always like these two dynamics that they say is at the root of every successful business. And I think that book spoke to us so highly because maybe we played into those roles, or we somewhat identified with each of those roles, you being that, that visionary that always wants to kind of keep pushing us forward and move on to the next thing. Sometimes you're like, we're ready to move on to the next thing before we're done the first thing. So whereas, and then I get to try to like play ground, let's make sure that we achieve the goals that we said we wanted to achieve. Like, I think it was just a great book in general for any business or you say anyone who is interested in partnerships or just pursuing any sort of business, help you with like what's really important. And it's okay. I think it gave us permission too to say like, I think maybe it gave me specifically permission, Kyle, to think like, I don't have to think like you. I think we both need to be, visionaries, or we both have to like keep moving the business forward. But I think it really took a weight off my shoulders to go, I'm going to let you do that on the business side, and I will focus over here on this. And actually, I think because we read that book, it actually allowed us to strengthen those two personalities, those two roles, where you got to strengthen being the visionary and I got to strengthen, being that integrator and working on systems. So I think, if you have not read that book, I think it's a must read for anyone who's, into business itself, but also team aspect. And also, that when we're, investing in real estate, you do need that team and you do need those folks beside you. And, having a visionary, having an integrator is a really important role. Now, you said, we got some new ideas as well that have helped kind of solidify some of those things. Tell the listener, I know the story, Kyle, but tell the listener right now about where did you stumbled across something else that helped kind of give you some new insight into your personality and how it gelled with my personality, and why, knowing those things can be so important for our listeners.
Well, I think what's really interesting about and how this whole thing happened is that even though I think the visionary integrator roles really, like you said, helped us to kind of better understand ourselves, but not as clearly, or at least I felt like there was still some parts of what I did on a daily basis that I almost felt like I was kind of fighting myself a little bit in terms of like what I was wanting to do and what I felt I was supposed to do and so on and so forth, even though I would try to remind myself like, hey, I'm going to wear that hat and you're going to wear this other hat. And, I am the type of person that when there's ideas out there or opportunities to learn something, I like jump all over them. Right. And that means I'm constantly putting things in our calendar, and we have a shared calendar. We may or may not have mentioned this on past episodes, but, you can see pretty much everything in my calendar. I can see everything in your calendar. And oftentimes we sync up on a lot of things. And, you'd often note that like, wow, like Kyle, why do you have that meeting at 2:00 with so-and-so from whatever? And I'm like, well, there's this idea. It's about ads, or it's about this, or it's about marketing, or it's about something. And I'm constantly doing those things, something new. And, you're always invited to it. And I always just sort of assume, John's probably going to be integrating some things. You'll probably not be on the call, but sometimes you are. And recently we were hopping on a call, and it was actually with a kind of like a tax strategist for, higher net worth clients, corporations. Like it was like really spoke to where we were. And I put this thing in the calendar. They had a great, pitch. It was a cold email, not cold, like, mean or anything, just like out of the blue. Cold call out of LinkedIn. And it was like, it spoke to me. I'm like, wow, they have some good copywriting. I respect it. I'm like, okay, I'm curious here. And for me, it's like almost like we have a really good structure, what we believe is a great structure in terms of our corporate structure and tax minimization and all the things that we've set up, all the learning that I've done. Mm-hmm. But I took this call, and I think immediately your thought was like, why are we going on this call? Like we,
actually
got it figured out, right?
I liked the idea of this particular call because we had, one of my roles, I think, being the integrator is also to try to like help you, be freed up to be the visionary. Mm-hmm. And so, when you go down, little missions and go, I'm going to explore, I'm going to learn. You had done a lot of that digging to put us in a position to try to figure out what is the best tax advantage ways for us to, save money or maximize the use of our money in our business. And I know that you'd spent so much time thinking about it. And then I think when we jumped on this call, I went into the call with a mindset of like, perfect. We're gonna find someone to pass this thinking that you've been doing over to someone else.
Pre-pile up.
Right. So I was like, this is gonna be great because we're gonna get on this call. This guy's gonna like, if this works out, this guy can do all the thinking on tax savings and, whatever, business corporation structure, all of that stuff that we've been, you've been digging on. I've been listening. I was like, he's going to take it off our hands. He's going to take it off Kyle's hands, and Kyle's going to be freed up to do some more thinking on some new area for us to like even push further. And I remember we got on the call, and, he was saying all the things that you'd already done and already done. I'm like, oh my God, this is a waste of time. Like we're here trying to, I'm hoping we're going to pass it off. And the guy is pretty much saying, I can't help you. Like, Kyle, you've done such a great job thinking about this. I don't think I can help you. And I'm like, oh man, like now this did not take the weight off the shoulders, and and here's the crazy thing we talked after the call is you had a completely different mindset on that call. Tell them about your mindset.
Yeah, for sure. I felt like at the end, I was like, we hung up, and I remember I called you, we're on Slack, I think, and, did a little hangout on Slack, and, you were sort of like, you just had that sort of like, oh, that didn't really that was pointless, we didn't learn anything.
I was like, well, we didn't get what we wanted,
Yeah. Meanwhile, I was like all like amped up and I was excited. I'm like, that's like great validation that the work we're doing, that you're on the right path. Right. So it's like, it's just interesting that, your perspective was different because you had a different kind of goal in mind. Whereas for me, I was looking more for the validation. Maybe there was a tip or whatever. But one thing it did lead to, which is great, is that I guess two things. First of all, we got connected to someone else on the team. He's like, you're going to like get along with this guy. Great. So I hop on the next call, and, John, you hop on this call, and right away, me and, this gentleman are hitting it off. He's definitely many years my senior. And,
a storyteller.
A storyteller. We're like, we're just, chumming it back and forth. And, I can kind of see John's like already on to probably like, doing something on the back end of the website, trying to like fix something and make something work, integrating. And ultimately, within like 20 minutes of that call, this person, sort of looks and says, you know what? He's like, we are so alike. You are a fact finder. And I was like, what? I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But I'm like, what does that even mean? What does it mean to be a fact finder? And he really led us down this path. And he started describing me based on this, like the way I was interacting with him. And obviously he's been watching for this for many years. Now that I'm aware of it too, I try to look for it in people's conversations, their personalities. But right away, he's like, yeah, he's like, I think you and I are really an awful lot alike. And he goes, John is actually an awful lot like my business partner, and he said, Steve's like a lot like John. And I'm like, well, that's really interesting. And then he just kind of started telling, I'm like, what are we talking about right now? Like, what is this thing you're describing? Like a fact finder. He goes, yeah, Kyle, like you're a high fact finder and a high quick start. I'm like, actually, those would be two ways that I would probably argue are a whole lot about me. And then he started to kind of go down this path of this idea, this Kolbe test he talked about, which is kind of like, you hear about these different, like the disc test, and there's all these different personality tests. But the thing that's really interesting about this one that got us, kind of going, is like, immediately I was like, oh, he's talking about the visionary integrator thing. Like he's talking the same language as rocket fuel, except I would argue he was like going even deeper. Like he was like kind of going even further down. And, he made a comment that I thought was hilarious. He goes, Kyle, he's like, I'm just going to let you know before I leave the call that you should probably hang up some photos of your family in your office. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, he's like, someone needed to remind me to do that too. Cause he's like, I bet there's nothing hanging on the walls in your office. And I'm like, are you in the office with me right now? Because literally that is me. Like I have nothing on the walls. I have a whiteboard and that's it. Like I have no pictures of anything. And, it's just right there. I was like, I got to go do this thing. Look at you. See, you're different than me. So we went straight down the rabbit hole. And because I'm a quick start, that immediately after that call, what I did, I went straight to this Kolbe site. We're going to have all the links in the show notes here. And honestly, it feels like from doing this assessment, it's a 36 question
36 questions,
doesn't take that long. And it actually, it has you answer 2 things on each one. There's 4 options. And it's sort of like, what feels most right? Like, what do you feel more, driven to do? And then what's the thing that you dislike the most from this group?
Most and least.
So you do these 36 questions and then out spits 4 numbers that are called your Kolbe number. And I'm telling you, I don't know about you, John, when you did it, but I'm going through this thing. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is me. And, I'm going to say one thing. Anyone who knows me out there, anyone who's listening who knows me will know it says, like, if you're tired of asking, this is for me, for my Kolbe number, it says, if you're tired of asking questions like, why do you put off making repairs? Or why don't you take better care of your equipment? Right. My wife was dying laughing because, Chantal's like, that's totally you. Like an oil change for me costs $750 because they're like, everything on your car needs to be replaced, basically, because I don't go and fix things. And like my Kolbe number actually says that about me. And to me, it was like, it took us from this visionary integrator land, and it actually gave us a new depth to better understand what actually drives us and what actually makes us do more procrastinating. So when you think about procrastinating, oftentimes procrastination is like your brain's like kind of way of going like, I don't want to do that thing over there. And you got to figure out a way to deal with it. And for me, it was like almost gave me permission to go, oh, like all those times I go down the rabbit hole, learning all these new things, like oftentimes I feel like I come up and there's nothing tangible to show for it. I learned a bunch, but I didn't really like make anything. I didn't make us any money, let's say. But at the end of the day, it's like, I now feel like so much better prepared to do tomorrow's work, let's say. And, that Kolbe number for me,
you need to satisfy it.
Yeah. It totally made me go, holy smokes, I need to like start rethinking how I do things, because some of the things I do every day are because I'm driven to do them. And then there's other things I do them because I think I'm supposed to, but I wonder if I'm actually wasting more time by trying to do those things instead of trying to figure out who can I give those to.
Yeah. And what I did the test after you recommended me to do it as well. And you being a fact finder, going and saying, I got to explore this. And you found, again, everything there is to know about the Kolbe-A index here. Yeah. And went digging and digging. It's like, you kept saying, you gotta do this. And in me, I'm not a fact finder. And we, we knew that about me already.
Quick start. I knew. I'm like, you're not a quick start. You're going to be like, I don't know if this fits into my schedule.
There's no way that I'm jumping right into that without, say, validation first, or thinking about, like whether it fits in with the schedule or whether it fits in with our existing goals. Like that's not me. I actually have the lowest, like you don't have a score as low as 2 like I do. And my 2 is in quick start. So
or
your highest
slow start, is that what they would call that?
Your highest is in quick start. And this is the part that I think is so great validation for us. but also giving us that permission and knowing where our strengths are, is that you are so great at the fact finding, but then your follow through is a 3, right? Like your follow through is like, I'm going to fact find like crazy, but then your job now, right, is to pass that off so someone else can do the follow through. This is why we've always adopted, the integrator visionary roles, because my follow through is an 8. Yeah. So my score on follow through is just as high as your fact finder score. So basically it's like, I will make sure we get it done. That's just my nature, right? My nature is to make sure that we follow through on everything that we want to do. And otherwise it will bug the crap out of me that if we set, something and then it's not there from, if I don't get it done, or if I don't get it off my to-do list, it eats at me to go like, I have a hard time with, setting something up and then not getting it finished. So, and then if you're watching on YouTube right now, Kyle is showing up his, an image of his 4 different,
perfect score, it says, right?
Yeah, because everyone has a perfect score.
Every Kolbe number is a perfect score because it's perfect for you. And exactly. That I think is such a massively awesome and validating, sort of message to have, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think, when you look at yours and then when you look at mine, we actually have, if we add ours together, right? And this is the best thing about the team aspect, is that, I think if you had 2 people at the same business who were both on the, have both tested the same, like if your index came up to, Kyle, if you had another fact finder as high as yours and another quick start as high as yours, I have a feeling that your the business might not just flow the same way our businesses have over the years. And I think when you look at ours, Kyle's putting them side by side right here up on the screen, is there are 4 areas that the index gives it to. Is there's a fact finder, there's a follow through, there's a quick start, and then there's implementer. And so when you look at our 4, where Kyle is weak, I am strong. And where Kyle is strong, I am weak. It's like we complement each other. And that's I guess a natural not a natural progression. It's just like what you said. It's kind of like the worlds aligned a long time ago and we, gelled. And I think probably because we have these opposite personalities in a way that we've gelled so easily over the time. We've been in business together, but I think it speaks to finding your team has to complement each other, right? Like you have to, if you go and find someone who's the same as you, it's not going to be beneficial. You want to actually find someone who is not the same as you, who excels in the areas that you don't excel in. And because if you can do that, then your business, your projects, your investments that you're looking for are going to take off because you're complementing each other.
Well, and it's interesting because while your Kolbe and my Kolbe are almost exact opposites, when you look at, here's Matt's over here, and Matt's a 7.463. I'm an 8.373. So Matt and I are almost the same. Mm-hmm. And it makes it interesting because I think that's why Matt and I get along so well, but we're also both not massive implementers, although we want the implementer. And actually Matt recently has hired someone onto his real estate team to kind of act in that role, right? Because I think Matt is more, again, kind of visionary side with me. Like we're, him and I can dream big dreams, right? But then it's like when the rubber hits the road, what are we gonna do? Now, mind you, in real estate and in real estate investing in particular, it's a little bit different. But one thing that, Matt and I learned early in our journey is that actually that's why property management worked really well for us, because we don't want to be the ones to actually do that. But it's just really interesting to see the different Kolbe numbers up on the screen. And one thing that I think is worth knowing is kind of knowing about yourself. Like, so for example, if you're going in for an interview or you're going for say, a promotion, something like that, like actually knowing your strengths, you can actually take your strengths and actually, while some parts of your strengths might be looked at as weaknesses, you can actually find what is the benefit in those strengths and really try to figure things out. So for example, while I'm not a great systems guy, right? So Jon is more of the follow through systems implementer type guy. The one thing it does say about me is that actually I work well within systems, because sometimes things don't always work the way we thought they were going to work. And when they don't work well, I'm great to make sure that we run with it and we make it work. Whereas someone who's very systematized and very sort of rigid into that idea of like, this is the way it's got to be, sometimes when it doesn't work out that way, you kind of hit a bit of a wall. And that's where that opposite on the team can be very helpful to kind of come in and go, whoa, hey, this is where I'm strong. Where you were preparing for the past 6 months, I got your back on 5 minutes notice, and I could come in and try to help you out in that regard. So the beauty is that you can take this and you can learn about yourself. And again, like, I feel like it's extremely empowering. Like this sentence, listen to this. It says, you have an uncanny talent for coming up with unique strategies. I would agree. Prioritizing opportunities. Yes. And dealing with the unknowns in complex problems. Like that's like, I'm all over that. Like, I love that stuff. You thrive when quantifying an opportunity and prospecting for ways to enhance it. And like that right there, that paragraph is why I am now a licensed insurance advisor and a wealth advisor, is because I go so far down those rabbit holes, and oftentimes just for my own knowledge, my own understanding. And then I start to see these opportunities of like, wait a second, how I can apply that to my current world, right? Not only myself financially, but also to our businesses. So, whatever you are, whatever your Kolbe number is, I think for me, we wanted to share this with the Invested Teacher audience because we want you to better know yourself, so you can actually figure out, like, if you feel like you're spinning your wheels a little bit, maybe it's because you're actually trying to do the things that what you naturally, or you are, sort of like, you're intrinsically drawn towards. You might actually be doing the opposite. You might be trying to do what like Jon wants to do. But if I try to do what Jon's driven to do, I'm probably going to, encounter some failure. It doesn't mean I can't do it. The other thing they're very clear on too is like, I could probably do what Jon does, but I'm probably going to be exhausted at the end of the day trying to do it. Whereas if I do the things that I'm driven to do, then I'm actually, at the end of the day, I actually have more energy to give. And that's one of the messages when we were on the phone there with Gord, who sort of, brought us on to this idea of the Kolbe test. It was like that moment where I'm going, wow, he is, well beyond where he needs to be in terms of financially. He could be retired, he could be doing nothing, but he gets energy from the work he does, and he doesn't need to do that work. And I'm like, wow, how awesome is that? And like, when we talk about our personal beliefs on this show, I think that ultimately is what it's all about. Like, we are actually trying ourselves to try to figure out and say, what's going to drive us to have the most energy for the longest period of time, while also feeling financially stable, where you can do those things. Like, imagine that world. If like every day you're like, I'm only going to do what I'm driven to do. That's a really hard thing to do. That's a hard task if you're not certain what actually drives you. You could probably name a few things, but you probably are doing some of the other things that you're like, don't drive you, and that actually drain energy from you. So that's kind of my big takeaway here. If you're looking to get started investing, knowing who you are is the first step. And then you can start looking for people that are going to complement you, because when you figure out the parts that you don't actually like doing, remember me, fact finder, looking all over the US, analyzing all the different property markets before I decided to buy a property in the US. Guess what? That I loved doing that. That doesn't mean that has to be you that's on the computer checking out every neighborhood, right? You could be more like Jon, who Jon's like, hey, listen, I trust everything Kyle and Matt are researching, so I'm good to go. So like, that complements that, and that frees Jon up to do the things that he's passionate about and that are driven for him. Jon, what's your big takeaway here for why maybe rocket fuel as a start for the book, and why maybe the Kolbe-A might be your next step in determining, hey, who you are and what your path is moving forward?
Yeah, I think my big takeaways is the same as yours, is really understanding, your method of operation, like how you operate. And I think that gives you flexibility. It gives you the freedom. Like I said, it feels like a weight is lifted off your shoulders when, you've got almost like this index that's telling you that these are the things that, you do well at, and these are the things that maybe you can find, help to do, like we've done. And I think it gave me permission to go, like, it's okay that I don't, do this, and this, because it does drain me, and it does, act against me. And it's way harder for me to do that when it's way easier for someone like you, Kyle, to do those things for me. As long as we're acting, in sync and in partnership, along the way. So I think that's a really big takeaway for anyone who's, thinking about partnerships, but also just themselves, and like how they operate. In knowing more about you can actually put you in a better position to meet new people, or work with others, or get that deal done. So I think it's so important to kind of understand who we are and how we operate. So if you have not yet jumped over to the show notes page while you were listening to this, so that you could start the Kolbe-A index test, do that now. Head on over to the show notes page, and you can click that link, and that's going to get you to the test. It's, like Kyle said, 36 questions. You're going to say most or least on each question, and you get 4 of those options. And then by those 36 questions, it's going to tell you what your Kolbe number is. I'd be curious to know if you have a number similar to mine, or similar to Kyle's, or maybe you have your own perfect, unique number. So hit us up, on social media. If once you do your test, and get your number, we would love for you to share that to us. Tag us at Invested Teacher on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, any of those things. Put a picture of your Kolbe number and tag Invested Teacher so that we can see it. We'll tag you ours as well. You can probably head over there right now if you're listening to this and see a picture of Kyle's, a picture of mine, over on social media. So folks, hey, if you haven't done this yet, share this podcast with a friend or a family. We want you to kind of keep that love going, and share with all your folks, so that we can reach a wider audience.
I love it. Hey, and guess what? Maybe you want to share that Kolbe number over on Apple Podcasts, leaving us a rating and review. You know how helpful that is in getting this show to more invested students just like you. We so appreciate you. And that's really our big ask. Of course, over on the investedteacher.com website, you can find all the show notes. You can find resources, our book list, our blueprint, all kinds of great goodies over at investedteacher.com. And this is episode 40. So just like every other episode, you can go to investedteacher.com/episode 40 or episode 40, and that will get you to those show notes. Friends, it's been a pleasure. And remember, if you haven't yet, get on the VIP club list over at investedteacher.com/VIP club. And guess what? You're going to get opportunities to win some awesome goodies. Sometimes something small, but sometimes it's something big. And of course, we'll try to give you some awesome value at the same time.
All right, invested students, class dismissed. Just as a reminder, the content you heard here today is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice.